Somehow you figured out a way to be immune to that, or to figure out a way to get through it. And this is something that a lot of people would say is like the biggest fear imaginable is public speaking. And
Sure.
you've made a career of it and you're really good at it. And for someone who is as a professional, how do you, like, in that moment when all the high school girls start getting up and the dudes start sneaking out and you can see that the attention is waning
Yeah,
and the challenge is happening, what's going through your mind at that moment? It seems like a real moment of fear, or something's
totally.
happening.
Yeah.
Like what's happening?
Well, like when something in the room happens, just in general, one of the things you're trying to quickly assess is how big of a distraction is this? Like, at what point do I need to say something? Because there is sometimes where like there's some little distraction, but it's only affecting like a few people or a very small part of the room, and there's really no sense in calling it out, because by calling it out, you bring everybody's attention to it, and everybody's distracted by it. But if it's the type of thing where like it's clear, that everybody's distracted, like you have to call it out. It's kind of this elephant in the room. And so when that happens, I think one of the things I learned is with speaking is that those type of moments are really good opportunities to connect with an audience, to endear yourself to an audience, and just kind of like, again, kind of roll with it. So I like when sometimes those types of things happen where it feels like this real, raw, unscripted, natural, this crazy thing that just happened in the moment. Cause it starts to feel like one of those things like, oh, you had to be there. Like it was just a really cool, it was funny, weird, awkward, whatever it may be. And so, yeah, I think you just kind of learn to roll with it. You make a joke about it, you point something out about it, and you move on. And like that's part of it. Those are also things that not every speech, not every presentation, not every, whatever the thing is that you do is going to go smooth. You're with this podcast, there's going to be some interviews and episodes you're just like, dang, that went really well. And some are just like, that just felt clunky for whatever reason. And one thing that's also, I think, important to note, whenever I'm working with speakers, is when a speech doesn't go well, there's three different variables and factors that go into it. And so you have to kind of assess each one of these. Okay. So one of them is going to be you. Did you show up prepared? Were you ready? Were you rested? Did you bring your best? Did you rehearse and go over your content? Do you feel like, no, I absolutely 100% brought my A game? Or were you kind of going through the motions, phoning it in, that sort of thing? And like, it didn't go well, but it's on you, So one is you're a big variable and factor. Another is going to be the audience. And so, like I mentioned, you have a bunch of students who are getting up and leaving. And so that kind of creates a weird dynamic. Or imagine, for example, let's say I was getting ready to speak to a group of sales reps. And right before I get up, there's the VP of sales, and he gets up there and he says, hey, bad news. COVID has really caused a lot of issues. The economy is starting to really affect us. And unfortunately, we're going to have to lay off 20% of you. But we're going to talk about that later. For now, please welcome to the stage our speaker, Grant Baldwin. It's like, it doesn't matter what I say, the audience is not paying attention, right? So the audience is a big factor. And the third variable and factor is going to be the environment. So let me give an example. I remember a couple of years ago, I was speaking at an event, and there's about 2,000 people there, and I was in a room that was set up for about 2,000 people. So I do a keynote, 2,000 people, room set for 2,000 people. It goes great. Right afterwards, they had me do a workshop for about 50, 100 people in the same room for 2,000 people. So when you're speaking to a group of 2,000 people in a room that seats 2,000 people, it works really well. When you're speaking to a group of 100 people in a room that seats 2,000 people, it's dead. It's completely horrible. And so the environment is a really, really big factor as well. So there's sometimes where you're like, dang, I really felt like I brought my best, but something about the environment or something about the audience or something else happened. Now, it's not a cop out, but you have to be aware of what are the things as a speaker that you can control, what are the things that you can't control.
Well, hey, knowing that that exact example of 2,000 room, and now you got 100 people in the workshop, is there any pre-framing you might say as you start the speech? Hey guys, there's 100 of us in this room where there was 2,000 a minute ago, and it may feel a little bit different, or blah blah blah. I mean, did you somehow pre-frame them somehow?
Yeah, what you want to do in those type of situations is you want the room to be as small as possible. Okay, and so what you actually want is for a room to feel too crowded, because especially as a speaker, energy, excitement, laughter is contagious. And so the more spread out people are, the more opportunities there are for just dead energy and things to like kind of fall apart. So I'll give you another example. I remember a couple of years ago speaking at something, and I got to the event, and I'm kind of looking through like the room setup, and there's just wall to wall chairs, and I'm talking with the event planner, and they're like, I'm so sorry, like we're even like pushing fire code here. And I was like, no, that's a good thing. Like you want a room that feels full. You want a room that feels packed. And so in that type of situation where you have 2,000 seats and you got 100 people in there, part of my responsibility as a speaker is to make the room as small as possible. So you don't want people sitting on the back row. You just say, hey, everybody come on in. Everybody scoot up. You can only sit on the first 3 rows or whatever it is, or let's just move chairs around and let's make it as small as possible. And so that by doing that, again, you're removing a lot of kind of the external other chairs and kind of distractions, and you're making that. Now, ideally, what would happen is you connect with the event planner, decision maker, or like the MC ahead of time and ask them to kind of help with some of that. So you don't have to be the bad guy of like, all right, now I'm going to hop up, and before I get into my little dog and pony show, I need everyone to get up and move around. So you want them to ideally be the one. So sometimes if we're in a situation where it feels like it may not be that full of a room, I'll ask them, hey, before you kind of go through the introduction, could you just have everybody move up? Or, even as people are coming in, like, let's just block off the last X number of rows there to make it feel as small as possible. And so, yeah, you want rooms that are too small versus something that's too big.
Okay, got it. Quick side story here. I feel that this is something I should share with you. I was giving a speech 3 years ago at a real estate luncheon. There's 125 people there. I'm 2 minutes and 45 seconds in. I feel like for me, I'm prepared. I got my timing down. So that's why I know it's 2:45 in, telling a story from Atomic Habits, James Clear's book, chapter 1, talking about aggregation of marginal gains. And I have this stutter moment where the word aggregation comes out, agada, and I say it 3 times, and then I go deer in headlights for a moment. I've only had that happen to me 2 times in speaking career. I don't have a career in speaking, but I've spoken a few times, and that happened. And in that moment, I thought, so this is what it feels like to go blank in the middle of a speech. And I appreciated that feeling because I'm looking for a thrill in some way. I don't get that type of feeling that often. So it was actually a really cool feeling. So I said to the audience after an eternity, which was really 3 seconds, I said, so just take a quick snapshot here, team. This is what it looks like when the speaker has a deer in headlights moment. Isn't that fun? And then went back into the moment, and I think they laughed and kept them with me. But I wanted to share that with you because you've probably had that moment when you go kind of a deer in headlights and forget. When that happens to you, how do you, or it probably doesn't happen anymore, but if it ever did happen in the past, how did you deal with that?